use this for a song. All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. Good to see each of you. As you can see, we're right in the middle of Navaratri. It's our 6th day, and this is the last day of Lakshmi. And so it's sort of like the pinnacle day of Lakshmi. And so we wanted to really honor that in the program that we have together, whenever we get together as a Sangha, you know. And so we thought we'd start with a little chant to Lakshmi to invoke the blessings of the divine and of that abundance that she represents. So I'm going to put the words on the screen. It's a song you're familiar with from the album The Ma Waltz. You know, I think it came out like 3 years ago. And here's the words. I'm going to sort of shrink myself.
And it's not call and response. We get to just all sing it together.
Yeah. So, without further ado, we're going to jump in. Hopefully everybody can read those lyrics okay. Let me know if there's any technical problems. All right. right. Microphone check. Everybody hearing us okay? Thanks. Cool. All right. Well, hopefully that felt nice and abundant. I felt really abundant. That was nice. I went for some real abundance and for the first time played the shaker while playing the drum.
That did
I
feel
thought this was the
abundant.
time to try it.
It was like you were a multi-armed deity.
All right. Well, we've got a really exciting sutra coming up today where we start to talk about the world of illusion, and obviously not staying there, but navigating our way through it. I'm going to pull the text up on the screen, and then we can get started. Just give me 5 seconds. All right, here we go. All right, so I separated the words out by like basically just trying to show you like there's almost like 2 separate words per word, and this will help us with pronunciation. So we're up to Sutra 3.7. Feel free, I think you guys prefer it if I spotlight, and then you don't have to do it. So it says Mohad Jayad, so you can try saying that. Mohad Jayad, and then Ananta Bogat, Ananta Bogat, Sahaja Vidya Jaya, Sahaja Vidya Jaya. Mohad Jayad, Mohad Jayad, that's you guys. Ananta Bogat,
Ananta Bogat.
Sahaja Vidya Jaya.
Sahaja Vidya Jaya.
All right, so now we'll just repeat it a few times, sort of trying to feel the vibration almost like a mantra. Moha Jayad Ananta Bogat Sahaja Vidya Jaya. Moha Jayad Ananta Bogat Sahaja Vidya Jaya. Last time. Moha Jayad Ananta Bogat Sahaja Vidya Jaya. After conquering the field of illusion, Maya, by destroying its many impressions, one attains the victory of the pure knowledge of consciousness. Take a moment to read that to yourself. We're all different learning styles. After conquering the field of illusion by destroying its many impressions, one attains the victory of the pure knowledge of consciousness. All right, so we're going to read, well, trying to figure out what the best way to do this is as far as introducing some of these key terms. Did you want to say something? Great.
I do.
No, that's great. Go for it.
Maybe it's because we just celebrated Durga in the beginning of Navaratri, but I feel like in listening to this translation of the sutra, like I really feel almost like the warrior nature of being a yogi. Like there's words like conquering, destroying, and then attaining victory.
Wow, that's really obvious now that she says it.
So, you can flex your muscles a little bit. We're pretty heroic.
You know, it's funny you should say that because Lakshmanjoo he always uses the term heroic yogi throughout the whole text, all the time. It's always the heroic yogi, this heroic yogi. So, interesting. Well, so we've got this field of illusion called Maya that we're going to look at in a moment, just to give you an idea of where that falls into reality according to the yogis. And we have to, quote unquote, destroy its many impressions. Destroy is an interesting word. We might say burn up a lot more often in our lineage. I think that comes up. Burn up is sort of like destroying. And through that, you realize, you know, your true nature. It's always that sort of That method where it's not like we're going right after our true nature. We're really working with what comes up. And by working with what comes up consciously, we're brought towards our true nature, you know? So it's always about like working within the arena of your life, because that's what we're burning up. So before we jump in, I just wanted to, for any of you that the word Maya might be new, or maybe you know it, but maybe you haven't seen it in the sort of the breakdown of the tattvas, because that's going to come up right away. Here we go. So you might know this chart. This is a little bit the less overwhelming of the charts.
Believe it or not.
Yeah. So this chart starts with Paramashiva at the top. Yeah, that text gets small. It's sort of a conceptual thing anyway. You don't have to really read anything. But you've got this one wholeness at the top, Paramashiva. And that one wholeness, that's pure unity, okay, separates into Shiva and Shakti. Okay, Shiva and Shakti are like two sides of one coin. They're not truly separate, but they are in a sense separate in the sense that you can only sort of perceive one or the other at the same time. Shiva is often described as like the canvas, whereas Shakti would be the paint on the canvas. They're both absolutely essential for the overall product, but somehow they're separate, but somehow they're not. So that's Shiva and Shakti, two sides of one coin, right? Now, this is sort of like a description of the yogis of how reality is formed. So if you look around yourself, you're looking at sort of the bottom of this chart. We're way up at the top of the chart, more in the abstract energetic realms, okay? So literally nothing's even been made yet. Nothing even exists physically yet. It's just a play of energy at this point. That play of energy, actually, as that play of energy takes place, Shiva and Shakti literally playing, with the will comes into action, which is just below it. Not a big deal that you can't read it, not a big deal. And then thought, and then action. So meaning that in our lives, you know this in a way is you sort of have an urge for something. That urge manifests as a thought. That thought produces an action. You feel thirsty. You think, where did I put my water bottle? You go get your water bottle and you take a sip. So we go through this will, thought, action, making our own reality all day long, all the time. And this is how the yogis describe reality itself as forming, too. So those are considered the first 5 pure tattvas. At this point, reality hasn't even started to exist in the sense of like physical dimensions. We're still really in the energetic realm here. The will, the thought, the action. The action's taking place, but there isn't anything yet to act upon. And that's where illusion comes in. Because as soon as you take that action, as soon as you reach for something, okay, as soon as you reach outside of yourself, you're in that moment reaching into illusion. You're reaching into a world that's somehow outside of yourself. Oh, I need something that I don't have. Boom, you're in illusion. The very instant you reach. And that's where, on this chart of manifestation, where illusion begins. And so I'll zoom in a little bit here, and now you can probably read it better, but again, you don't actually have to. This is Maya. It's the 6th tattva. The 6th thing, right after action, as soon as you reach, you're reaching into Maya, you're reaching into illusion. And then suddenly all of those things that we were talking about earlier, the will, the thought, the action, all that stuff that we were talking about becomes limited forms of itself. We have limited agency, which is limited action. We have limited knowledge, and we have limited desire, or this could also be translated as limited will, limited urge. This is also where the ideas of limitations of time come in place, in space. Not that we can get into all that right now. But basically, you have an entire world that forms, and it's a limited world. And the idea is that this is sort of the play, this is how Muktananda phrases it, like the play of consciousness, the play of reality, the play of Shiva trying to find Shiva within himself or themself. That concept is never going to make sense. But there's a fun quote at the beginning of the in the commentary of Shiva Sutra 1.2 that I thought actually helped me make a little sense of that, which I'm going to pop on the screen. All this is the prelude to the sutra, if you can believe it. So here comes that little quote that I think's, oops, that's the song. Remember how easy it is to sing a song? Think about that while we're going through all this philosophy. Go ahead.
Well, I'll let you do this thing.
All right, I'm going to make the screen less crazy. Okay, I'm going to bump us down. Give me one sec. Okay, so this is commentary from Jai Deva Singh. He says, oh, the Anava Mala, don't worry about that. That just basically represents that push into illusion. He says, what is that? He's talking about Maya here. He says, Maya basically is due to the wonderful power of Shiva. Get this. He says a person may conceal everything, but a person cannot conceal their own true nature, their own nature. But he says, but Shiva has the wonderful power of veiling their own true nature. This self-veiling power of Shiva is known as Maha Maya. In the Anu, the limited individual, that self-veiling works as Maya. It's supposed to say Maya. There's some typos in this book because I can tell you later, but this self-veiling is his technique or stratagem for the play of life in varied multiple forms. So I just want to interpret that a little bit for you. Shiva has a power of concealing. I'm saying their own true nature because I just feel like his, her, it just doesn't make any sense, you know? And Muktananda talks about that too. Shiva has the wonderful power of veiling their true nature, Shiva's true nature. Shiva's the only one that can do that. You can put on a mask for Halloween, okay? And you can go to a party and you can like sort of like play the character. Let's imagine we could actually go to a party. And you can play the character and maybe people are like, so who's the jack-o'-lantern over there? And you're like, oh, I think that's so-and-so. And blah, blah. And eventually, after the night's through, you know who the jack-o'-lantern guy is. You figured it out, right? Because no matter how much you veil yourself, no matter how much makeup or whatever you're wearing, your mannerisms come through, your voice comes through, all the little things that make you who you are come through. You can't really hide who you are. That's what it's saying. It's saying a person can conceal a lot, but they can't quite ever hide who they really are. But he says, but Shiva has a power where Shiva can literally, truly hide Shiva from themselves. That's Maya. That's illusion. It's the Halloween costume of Shiva that is impenetrable to the mind. Your mind will never find Shiva in this Halloween costume of reality that surrounds you called Maya. But you can find Shiva by burning up all the illusion around you with your practice. You can literally unveil every single thing slowly but surely until all that's left is Shiva right in front of you. So that's why we're trying to burn up Maya, and then through that process, our true nature is revealed to us. So we'll read the sutra one more time, and then we'll jump in. After conquering the field of illusion, Maya, by destroying its many impressions, one attains the victory of the pure knowledge of consciousness. So before we move into the sutra, any questions or comments so far? Govinda, please, and then Anandama.
So then is Maya, is it like our perception of the world that we see like through our attentions? Is that a stretch? Is it like, what is it? Yeah. Sorry, I don't know how to ask any clearer than that. Is it like how we're perceiving the world around us based on our own?
To answer your question, I just want to glance at this really cool excerpt from Muktananda that was supposedly on the last sutra, but I think it really applies to this sutra more. And I think he addresses that in the first paragraph. But do you want to add something?
Yeah, I don't know the answer exactly, Govinda, but if Satyam puts that chart back up, Maya is higher than our mind, and it's higher than everything that is in the manifest world. So though I don't totally get it, my understanding is that it precedes us as individuals. So I don't know if you want to zoom in.
I can't zoom in, but I can zoom in on the part that I took a screenshot of earlier, but it's just the Maya part.
Well, if you don't have to, unzoom in.
It's right. I think what you're referring to is this. It says Purusha, individual consciousness. You guys see right here, number 12, individual consciousness, Purusha. And so, that, like what you're saying, it's below Maya. It's literally like manifests after it. So everything that composes up your individual consciousness is layered in with Maya.
Right. And then if you take the zoom in away,
zoom in.
Just in case this helps, you see that line at the bottom fifth of the page? It's like the whole manifest world is underneath that line. So that's all the elements. So just to give you a sense of how big of a scope we're talking here.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
Way to go. And another thing to give you a sense of how big the scope is that the very last thing on this entire chart is the Earth. It's like if you like on Google Maps, we can only zoom in so far. It's like all the stuff we know seems to be even below where this thing can zoom into. It's like it feels like where we're at. Anandama. Oh, and the Muktananda thing, it'll come up in a little bit. I think that was a sufficient answer, as good as I was going to have.
I can't remember what I was going to say because I got lost in all that. but then I thought of something else. This reminds me of when we talked about Spanda. I unmute myself.
Oh, yeah.
And we are pure, so to speak, and then we, as you were talking, as we go through this and we expand and we get all this like fuzzy stuff on us, and then as we get clear again, I don't know. It's just the way I'm trying to explain it to myself, I guess.
Explain what part of it to yourself.
Differentiation.
Cutting through Maya.
Cutting through Maya.
It's like cleaning a glass. That's how I thought at first.
It's cleaning a glass? Cleaning a glass?
Yeah, like we're the light in a dark lampshade, and we're. That's what we're doing, and so that we can see ourselves, but we can't do it with our mind.
Absolutely. The what you said there about cleaning a glass is actually a metaphor that's been used to describe about the mind itself, where the buddhi, the intellect, almost like the interpreting engine of the mind, it gets they say it's like a mirror, and it sort of reflects easily what's in front of it. But when we have a busy mind and a lot of thoughts, that it's almost like a mirror with a bunch of stuff all over it, and it impairs the intellect's ability to do what it normally would do if we were just sort of out of the way. And so I think, again, like you said, cleaning the glass, burning Maya, these things where it's like we're really trying to just work with what's in front of us consciously, You know, not like I'm necessarily trying to find my true nature in this activity, but rather I'm trying to do this activity as consciously as possible, is sort of what I think you're getting at, Anandama, with like the cleaning of the glass is really the work that we have to do. I mean, Rudy talked about spiritual growth, like he said he felt like an ox tied to a grinding wheel, and he just said spiritual growth is like going around this grinding wheel, grinding corn. I mean, it's like very, you know, simple work that it's just once you know how to do it, you can just plug in, and like Anonymous was saying, you can just clean the glass, you can just grind the corn, and literally that takes you up. All right, let's try the first paragraph. So it'll start here, and then it will go, just give me 1 sec to organize my screen. It will go onto the next page a little bit.
Raise your hand if you haven't gotten to read in a while and you want to read.
I feel like I haven't heard. Yeah. That was a shrug, Asha, that looked like, yeah, I'd like to read. I know how to read body language.
I don't mind reading. I do like to read. Sure.
All right, cool. All right, well, I will flip the page when you're ready, when you get to it.
Okay. Maya cannot be eliminated until its last faint impressions are also destroyed. Until then, this illusion, moha, will not end. And when these remaining faint impressions are also overcome and destroyed, then one achieves the victory of the pure knowledge of consciousness.
Cool. Well, there we go. It's all on that page now.
Do you want to continue?
Well, I'm just sort of letting that part sink in. The next paragraph's pretty big. Last faint impressions are also destroyed. What? Oh, did I see a hand? Go ahead.
I have a question. But we can't destroy or overcome this with our mind.
Right. It's all through practice. And, you know, well, it does talk about what you gain from all this is vidya, which is this like, it's like knowledge that actually guides you to your practice. And so it's almost like all of this is so, you know, so Rudy said at one time, he said his enlightenment was learning how to practice. Not like reaching a certain level, but like finally understanding how to get this gear moving and knowing. And that's sort of what this is talking about. Like through our practice, we actually learn, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Can you guys relate to that epiphany? Have you had that epiphany? You're like, oh, this is how I meditate. Like, I get it, you know? But then you get to a new level and it feels like, whoa, again, you know? But like we learn to recognize it's not like we're sitting there in meditation and we just go like, I am the self. Like, I don't know, sure. I hope that happens for all of us. But a much more practical realization that happens, I think, a lot along the way is, I know how to do this. I can do this. Yeah. Yeah, Anju.
Sorry, struggling with my unmute there. I don't know, talking about Rudy for me just brings up that idea of like full kind of consumption and devouring too, that same kind of language of just like needing to consume everything, right? No judgment, no attachment, no looking at any of it with your mind and interpreting it, but just absolutely devouring everything, good, bad, everything in between, and like trusting in that process of like, you know, I might not know how to destroy Maya, but I know how to sit and do my practice, and that's going to change, and that's okay. I just keep doing it and doing it and doing it until everything I could ever imagine is gone.
And that is a realization. Like, you've taught beginners meditation. You know that you can't just tell people that on day one of meditation and actually think they're going to A, believe you, or B, be willing to do that. Like, that's a realization that comes with a lot of work. Like, that's a realization. Like, oh my God, it's really effort over time. Wow. You know, so yeah, exactly. That's vidya. Like that, what you just described, like that's one form of vidya, a type of knowledge that actually points you towards growth. It's real, pure knowledge, it's called. All right, excellent. Does anyone else want to jump in on this part, or should we read a little more? Looking for a hand. All right, need a reader. And I'm going to pop my screen back up to spotlight for y'all.
Radharani, will you read?
Oh, Radharani, yeah.
Okay. What is illusion? Moha. Illusion is this completely differentiated universe filled with impressions and experiences. When this illusion is conquered, Yayat, which means overcome, Abhibhavat, then victory is achieved. But this only occurs when the last faint impressions, samskara,
A word we actually know.
yeah, of this illusion are also destroyed. Through this pure knowledge, vidya is realized, where eternal aspects are revealed and supreme God consciousness is obtained. Then, being victorious, you attain and hold this supreme, pure knowledge of consciousness.
I'll go back for a quick reread visually if anyone needs that. Oh, sorry if that was too quick. All right, pretty similar to what we've been talking about, I think. Not like a ton of new information. But to answer your question, Govinda, what is Maya? It's the whole universe, according to what you're perceiving, is Maya. Everything in your perception appears to fall within this category. Yes.
Something I'm struck by that he says over and over again is faint impressions. Like when I think of samskaras, I actually think of like really deep impressions. It was helpful, Anju, what you just shared, because it makes me feel like, okay, at first, working on the deep impressions is almost when we're on our cushion, we're doing our work, we're surrendering our thoughts, our tensions, like our day, whatever. And then maybe eventually, after we've surrendered enough, then it becomes time to surrender these fainter impressions. But it takes a long time to get to that point. So the way you described it, Anju, made me feel like, okay, I can relate to this now. And then there might be this eventual, like, next part of working where we're working on fainter impressions because we've already surrendered so many times. It could also just be a subtle way that he's
they say it a lot.
Samskara.
Last faint impressions. There seems to be a real emphasis on having to completely eradicate it, because I would assume.
Yeah, the word last
because of the
helps.
holographic nature of Shiva, it's like every little cell has this Maya in it, and then it grows right back. It would just grow right back until it's completely eradicated. I was thinking about this in terms of darkness, like at night, and light, and it's like I went out the other night, and our dog Mala sleeps right outside our door, and I walked outside, and we had been in the bright room. I walk outside, and I was like, "Where's Mala?" And I like looked around, and I like felt in the darkness, and I was like, "Oh, there's the furry head, or is that her back?" And I was like, "Oh, here it is." I figured it all out. And then I was like petting her for a little while, and noticed the stars, and I was like, "Cool," you know. And then Abaya comes out, walks out, same exact thing. She walks out, she's like, "Where are you guys?"
New moon.
You know.
Yeah.
And I was like, "We're right here." I was like, "Don't step on me." And she's like, "Where's Mala?" And I was like, "Mala's right here." And the idea is that, like, I walked out and I thought, it's completely dark out here. There's no light. The light has been eradicated. And give me a little bit of time, and I was like, "Oh." And your eyes adjust, and you notice there's quite a bit of light out here. And so what I thought was completely eradicated, if you were going to call that like samskaras, just being there for a little bit longer. Oh no, there was plenty left, plenty left. And I think that's really how it is with light. You know, I know light's always the good guy, so it's weird to be like, eradicate light, but you get the idea where you should never assume that you're done, is I think what we're getting at. It's silly too, because literally you can walk outside your room at night and realize how little you can physically tell sometimes of where you are. And then with time you go, "Oh wow, I still had a lot of work to do."
Yeah, it's like at the level that you're at, it's true. Like you've eradicated everything that you can see, you know, at your current level of existence.
That's
But
true.
what we know about the growth process is like we hit a new level and the rules change. So it's like what you can't see right now becomes apparent the next time you butt up against that samskara that you thought you had surrendered completely,
Yeah,
but you just
yeah.
couldn't see what was left
Couldn't see what was
at
left.
the current level, or pramata is how it's talked about in the sutras. Usha.
And then Jaya.
I just wanted to talk about or to speak to the part about knowing how to practice. And I feel like that is the gift of having a teacher, a living teacher, because Babaji is telling us all the time and pointing us how to practice. You know, he was talking about how to practice the Guru Gita this last Monday night, and you know how to absorb. So he's always giving us directions on and the clues on how to do this, to practice.
Yeah, teaching someone how to practice is like the most valuable thing you can give someone, because once they know how, right, then they know how to fish. And it's just like that, because Baba says so many times, "I can't do the work for you." He literally couldn't, you know, because all of us have so many layers of this to get rid of. Like, we can only do it. We're the only one here enough, you know, in our reality. So yeah, how to practice is the real gift. Jaya?
I was wondering what you guys think about how it says the pure knowledge. Let's see how I'm like taking up the entire screen here. Get out of that somehow. The victory of the pure knowledge of consciousness, like the pure knowledge of consciousness versus consciousness. I wonder what the distinction is between those.
Help me with this part.
Because I think of like knowledge as bondage. So I have this like very, not very positive view of knowledge.
Yeah, the victory of the pure knowledge. The pure knowledge is this vidya that it talks about later at the bottom of the screen where it says, "Through this pure knowledge." Through this, I would think a comma would be there. Pure knowledge is realized. So there's this jnana. We were just talking about this the other day. Jnana is knowledge, but jnana, that form of knowledge, can go either way. That knowledge can elevate you if you have your awareness within while you interact with the knowledge. Sneak preview next week, talking about this in at the presentation. Or it can submerge you, or as they say, push you down into the field of ignorance, is how Lakshmanjoo talks about it. All depending on like where your inner awareness is. If you get sucked out into it, it pulls you down the tattvas, down into differentiation. If you remain internalized while you interact with this knowledge, it actually pulls you up. You, as Rudy says, you use that as fuel for growth. And so jnana, which is the knowledge we're sort of more familiar with in Sanskrit, can go either way. But vidya represents the upward jnana, the one that's actually pulling you up. When you actually say, I know, I get how to practice. In that moment, it's like you're having a flash of pure knowledge. Did I cover everything in that question, or did I make some?
I have a follow-up question
Yeah.
for you because I don't know the answer. I feel like something I heard you say, Jaya, was like, what's the difference of the pure knowledge of consciousness versus just consciousness? And I feel like that's a really great question because it sort of is a little dualistic, right? Where it's like, oh, I have this pure knowledge of consciousness, but it's still separate. I don't have the answer to that, but I wanted to repose that question in case.
Help me out.
What is the difference between pure consciousness and pure knowledge of consciousness? Like, wouldn't the goal be pure consciousness? Why is this one level removed?
I feel like what this sutra is actually gonna start harping on is sort of this these segments of growth where it says, like, in a couple of pages, it's gonna be like, don't stop at individual consciousness. And it even calls that like God consciousness. And then it says, keep going to reach universal God consciousness. And so I feel like it's establishing these like almost like landmarks that are all in the right direction, but like as we're told so many times, in order to get rid of those faintest impressions, can't stop. So as far as answering your question, right now I feel like we'd be better served almost to like work through the text and try to actually answer that question in the text, because it's actually what the sutra is a lot about. So sort of going to postpone it.
Okay.
But unless you want to add something, or if anybody else wants to comment on where they're at with that.
I think what I'm hearing is that our end goal is not just pure knowledge of consciousness, but it's like it's a really great step in the right direction. And then I think, Jaya, you picked up on that ultimately is this union with consciousness. And this is like a step along the way, but stay tuned.
Yeah. Just so it's so far above. I almost want to just be like, can we go back to just wax on, wax off, cleaning the glass? Like those next levels are just so far in it, but worth considering. We're at a pretty good stopping point, actually, but we can do this last paragraph. That way it just sort of feels like, because it's sort of like it literally starts with in conclusion, so it feels hard not to use it as our concluding paragraph. So we'll read this last paragraph. Therefore, even though it's not really the conclusion of this sutra at all, it's just like a conclusion unto itself. So let's get a reader.
Any volunteers?
Oh, volunteer night.
You can do it. I know someone wants to read.
Yeah, who hasn't read in a while?
Thanks,
all right,
Usha.
All right, so we'll just take it up.
Therefore, the conclusion here is that in Anava Upaya, one also is capable of entering into Shambhava Upaya, after entering and completing Shaktopaya. So first this yogi completes Anavapaya, then he gets entry into Shaktopaya. And when Shaktopaya is completed, he gets entry into Shambhava Apaya.
Yeah. So if you all remember, we are in the Anava Upaya. This is the third Upaya, but yet represents actually the beginning of your journey. It's like base camp, starting your hike, loading your pack, starting to understand what's involved. Shakti Upaya sort of represents like you're in the hike and you are just putting miles on every day. Like you're not, you're not in base camp anymore. You're on the path and you're working consistently. And then Shambhava Upaya represents the experience and the perspective you have at the top of the mountain. And this is all an internal process, because though we're climbing this mountain, we're not actually leaving our life to do it. This entire process is happening internally, so that when you arrive at the top of the mountain, you're not actually separate from your life. You just have a perspective that is that much above the mundane aspects of your life, that you're actually relating to your life from. If you remember how Babaji said, "Oh, you mean that version of me?" and pointed, and then we all looked and then realized he was talking about this internal perspective he has. It's almost like a mountaintop looking down at where he really sits. And so, though we're in the base camp, we're absolutely capable of that mountaintop, but we have to, it says here, really understand that Shakti Upaya and the work of putting all this stuff into practice is essential, and that it really is a step-by-step process. And so the steps that we'll end with today, again, if we looked back at the sutra itself, destroying the many impressions of Maya at every step along the way. It's almost like you can't get to the mountaintop without every step. You can't just not have that 100 feet, or you can't just stop in the middle and be lifted up to the top. It's like just trying to say, like, you need every single step to get to the top. Anything to conclude with, or anyone else want to?
Well, I do think the reminder that we're in the Anava Upaya, so the beginning of the journey, does help clarify the discussion based on Jaya's question, where it is like we're trying to catch that glimpse of consciousness, and it's almost like when we can have a pure knowledge of that existence, it's like, okay, now we can really hike towards the mountaintop, which I think represents that union with that consciousness.
And it almost feels like those natural demarcations that they're talking about, like the God consciousness is almost like this separation between Anavapaya and Shaktipaya, and then this universal God consciousness is the separation between the Shaktipaya and the Shambhavupaya. And then there is the Anupaya. It's the fourth upaya that is unteachable and represents, and it's not written. It's the secret one, and it represents that last step into pure being. So that would be like that last demarcation, merging samadhi. Well, what do you say? Would you like to meditate now?
No, I want to do the Anupaya.
Okay.
Let's all step into pure consciousness.
All right. So I know you're probably all set, but feel free to move around a little bit. One of my favorite things is to really initiate that movement from the hips and let it ripple through the spine to the shoulders, so that you have a full body movement. It's really good for the whole muscular fascial system. And if you can let it be a little bit not like linear, so it's not just front and back or side to side, but it sort of reaches into those gray areas. And then you can close the eyes and just really tune into the feeling if you haven't already. And take your time making this motion smaller and smaller. That's the best part. And so keep it somewhat random movements, but just let it slowly calm. And you try to float to center instead of holding center. You try to arrive there. You can swallow to release any tension in the throat and take just one smooth but deeper than normal breath. And let your attention sort of follow your next exhale and feel that exhale bring you all the way to that point of stillness. And then try to let the inhale come to you. It's not easy, but it's possible. Each exhale is an opportunity to really feel yourself softening and releasing, feeling. And then the inhale is this real skillful moment where there's a part of us that wants to grab onto it, wants to accentuate it, but it really doesn't need that much help from us. So you try to let it come to you. It naturally floats in and floats up, and then it starts to become the exhale. It's okay if at the bottom of your exhale you might feel a little uncomfortable. It's pretty natural. Just try to just be aware and observe it, and then let the breath again come to you. We normally clip our exhales a lot. We don't let them complete. So it can be challenging. For the last couple minutes, let yourself really explore that feeling of emptiness at the bottom of your exhale. Not holding the breath, but just deeply feeling. That moment at the bottom of your exhale is a moment to sort of feel this potential that we're reaching for, this emptying out of illusion. You can't hold yourself there, but you can get a glimpse. You can let yourself move a little bit in the spine, shoulders, and neck. Namaste, everyone. Happy Navaratri. Hope that Lakshmi rained down a little bit on you today. And tomorrow begins the Saraswati days. And we'll be doing a Tara class tomorrow here with Faith. And it's the Tara Saraswati Tara. So that's pretty amazing. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So it's a good time the next 3 days to do any activity that is creative or them. So the study of philosophy, any art, dance, whatever helps get in the flow. You have extra help.
And one last thought, for any of you who are sort of going to be presenting one day in the philosophy program or really looking to like, what's the next level? What we were talking about is it's not overwhelming, but something as simple as taking a moment after class or sometimes in the next week to just actually ask yourself, like, what was the highlight? Like, what thought stood out to me? What thought would I want to like remember? What would I want to write down? What would I consider actually repeating to myself as I move through my day? And that can be a great starting point for like a comment on the blog where just literally having to say like, this stood out to me. I repeated it during my day. This was the result, is really the beginning of philosophical commentary. And commentaries prove to be one of the fundamental ways we actually understand something in ourselves. So if you're being pulled in that direction, push yourself to just take one thing, repeat it during the day, see what happens, and then write about it. A couple of sentences or more, whatever you think. So if you ever want to, it's going to be available on kundaliniyoga.org. This will be posted as the video, and then you can just comment under it. And cool. And if you have any questions, ask. But that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for staying late. We'll hang out in case there's any questions or anything, but have a great night. Oh.